This is the Mod Pod, brought to you by Modality, helping businesses optimize their Microsoft technologies everywhere.
Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Mod Pod, and we are joined this week by Caroline Edwards, who is Product Marketing Manager for us, and Jack Fisher, who is Pre-Sales Consultant. And we are going to be talking about well-being and the various technical tools that are around to help you manage it properly. So let's crack on. Hello to you both. Thanks for joining. And I think you're both new to it, aren't you? This one, I don't think you've done one before. So we will treat you gently. But today's topic, well-being and the technical tools that are around to help us manage it. Well-being is something that is obviously talked an awful lot about, especially during the lockdown and people working in hybrid offices and having been working at home for quite so long time. So it's really sort of escalated up the importance tree. And I wanted to have an explore around, first of all, what you guys consider well-being to be, because it probably means slightly different things to different people. And then we can have a look, I think, at some of the ways that we can use the technology we've got to try and help employees through the, I guess, the now relatively well-established way of working. So well-being as a topic, what do we think? What does it mean to you? Can I just point out, I don't think originally it was a word when I was a kid at school, but there we go. That's a whole different thing. So who's going to go first?
Okay, I'll kick off then. To me, well-being encompasses what you're doing in your personal life as well as your work life, and it covers everything from how comfortable you are sitting at your desk to whether you feel better in the morning to the afternoon, how you get on with your peers, whether you're feeling comfortable in your work and fully supported, and perhaps how much of the working day you take into your personal life, and how much you're able to keep within the confines of a working day and switch off.
Okay, what about you then, Jack?
Yeah,
you're not allowed to say the same thing, right? It doesn't work like that.
I echo what Caroline says, but to probably try and add to it slightly, I think you touched on how something as simple as just like your setup, so how you're sitting and making sure you're comfortable. I think that really contributes to it. I think the work-life balance part is really, really important. I think that's kind of been blurred quite a lot since people are working from home. So lots of people will get up early and just think, oh, well, I've got nothing better to do. I'll just go and log on and start doing some emails straight away. So they're starting at work earlier, and then they'll probably sit there much later on into the evening. So it's how you sort of break up your day. I think like a traditional 9 to 5 in a lot of jobs is probably gone now. So it's how you structure your day and make sure that you're not on all the time, and that you make the most of the downtime that you do have, with whether that be with friends, family, whatever, going out, doing some exercise, something like that.
Cool. So look, why don't we start then with that point that you've raised about people starting earlier and finishing later, and the blend balance thing. So I've had I guess a bee in my bonnet for quite a while. To be honest, I just do these things. I just moan all the time about the term work-life balance, because that kind of, to me, indicates that you're trying to get this level sort of situation. And I don't think that's the case anymore. For me, it's much more of a blend rather than a balance. So my typical day, for example, is I'll get up, laptop will go on somewhere around about 7 o'clock. I'll do some work. I'll then probably stop for a good chunk whilst the boy gets ready for school, and we'll see him off, and I'll go and get some breakfast and stuff like that. So there'll be a gap there. And then you're right, I might go out and do, a bike ride if the weather's nice, or potentially take the dogs out or do something else. So I will periodically break up the day And then when it comes to the end of the day, the sort of the 5:30, 6 o'clock, wherever it is marked there, that's where I like to try and tail off. I'll keep an eye on things, but I won't necessarily actively be working unless there's something critical I need to get done or get out the door. But I know many people within the team and within the organization who don't do that end of the day and who do the latter part of the day. And so, I think the idea of trying to balance things is a fairly sort of, it's almost flawed. I think if you try and do that, you're probably going to fail and end up, you got to be quite strict, I think, in some places.
I think you do, and I think that's part of the problem. When I joined Modality, we were in lockdown, and so from day one it was remote. And of course, you want to please everybody, you want to be available all the time. And for me, it was being strict about taking breaks and not being paranoid that, if it goes to away, people think, oh, she's watching Jeremy Kyle and, eating biscuits and drinking tea. And I think, from a new starter perspective, getting that blend is a bit of a confidence thing.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I've probably been largely working from home for 20 something years as the technology's progressed. Some of it was working at home, not on systems, because you couldn't really get to them. So I guess I'm sort of relatively disciplined in sort of how my day is structured, but it's trying to fit in and around everybody, because it's like, I know, some of our management team, etc., will work the latter part of the day and not the morning, and therefore am I beholden to answer emails and stuff. So I think there is an element there of how do you control and not end up working from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. Obviously there are certain things, within Office, for example, you can set your working hours so that you don't get interruptions after 7 o'clock or whatever it is, or you don't get the little flashing light on your phone, which, let's face it, is a magnet to almost anybody who's got a mobile device, isn't it? What's that flashing for? So I think there are some sort of some bits and pieces around that. If we're talking about sort of how that piece, how that time span, that managing your time, what do we think about the tools that Microsoft have got or that are available out there to be able to help manage that kind of thing?
I think
we don't think anything of it.
I think there's tools there which are really useful straight off the bat. So Microsoft Viva obviously jumps out as that wellbeing tool that can help do that. The Insights app, which you can get within Teams, so you can have that at an employee level, is really useful. It will help you do things like book out your calendar, so you can say, right, I need some focus time here, so I don't want to be disturbed, and it will automatically look in your calendar and book out those times. I personally haven't really used the focus time so much, but I do actually, I consciously make an effort to say, right, I do quite a lot of running, so I purposely book out running slots throughout the week that I'm not going to be available, and I try and really stick to those, because I find that really helps with your mind and get out into the outside world, go for a run, come back, you feel really refreshed and ready to go again. So booking out time in your calendar is really helpful, I think. Also then, I think doing that's a really important thing. It ties into what Caroline said about, especially when you're a new starter, which I still am pretty much. I've been here just over a month. But you don't want to be seen to be away all the time, do you? Because you think, oh, he's not doing anything. He started. He's not actually cracking on with any work. So having something actually booked out and say, look, I'm not going to be at my desk at this time. People know then not to try and disturb you or anything like that.
And do you leave it in your diary? Sorry to cut across you. Do you leave it in your diary as running or something like that?
Yeah.
So people can see that you're running.
I'm out for a run. Yeah.
Brilliant. I absolutely love that, because for me, there's an absolute transparency. If I'm out for a bike ride, I'm out for a bike ride. I've got nothing to hide about it. It's like, we work enough hours. I don't think
Yeah.
there's anything, where's he gone? Where's he gone? Why is he blocked out 2 hours there? That's more suspicious than it is I've gone out for a bike ride.
And do you know what? I think you've touched on something really interesting there, because there is no walking around the office, getting to know people you've not met before. So the human side of your colleagues, what their interests are, what drives them outside the office, even if it's just as simple as trying to book a meeting and seeing, oh, Jack's going running. Okay, that's interesting. Good for him. And then you look at another slot. It's just another little way of getting that bit closer to colleagues without the, one-on-one in-person office environment.
Yeah, I had a walk around the office earlier on around here, and I can honestly say I know everybody in this little room. Not very well, but I know them. But no, I think you're absolutely right. A lot of the office interaction is, yes, you talk about work, but you probably talk more about things outside of work than you do anything else. So I think that is hugely important. The focus stuff, I do definitely use it, and I'd probably say now I rely on it just for my calendar to just say I'm just booking some time in that you're not by default going to get filled. Where I think there is a slight danger that when you rely on that, people do look in your diary and go, oh, focus time. Can I have some of that? It's like, well, the nature of the name of it kind of insinuates I don't want you to take it. But even the fact that it flicks your presence status to a do not disturb, I think is actually pretty important. You might not appreciate it at the time, but just the fact that you don't get little dings and pop-ups and stuff like that, I think is quite important. I think the other thing that you mentioned there, Jack, the Vivus piece, the insights. If we start on that part, I think there is a growing importance on recognizing work patterns that would be leading towards people overdoing it, overcooking it. And I had a customer conversation, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years ago, actually around the teamwork analytics piece, because obviously we know that goes into much more granular detail than the sort of stats that you can get from just straight off the Microsoft portals or dashboards. And they were saying, it's like, well, we know if people are sending emails, we can see what devices they're using, we can see if they're reading things, we can see if they're interacting with Teams, etc. Can we build something to say that generically this person is working X number of hours throughout the day, consistently, and it ranges from 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, and that's happened over a 3-week period or something like that. Not that you send an email at 7 o'clock in the morning, you send another one at 10 o'clock, and in between is fairly blank. It's where you can see a busy pattern of meetings and stuff, and you take that right the way across. And then could we use that to flag them as a concern for potential burnout? Or do you then have your wellbeing team? I don't know how many companies have a wellbeing team. I know we don't. We'll call them HR or whatever it is now. Of actually, do you know what? You probably are working too long. And I know Insights is that kind of pattern. And I think, to be honest, I think that's quite a good thing, because there does, I think, where you're not in the office, there is a mentality sometimes with management to think, well, where are they? What are they doing? And that can't be healthy, I don't think. I mean, it doesn't happen in here, so we're kind of lucky. It's you've got something to turn out the door, and it's got to go out on Friday at 2 o'clock. If it's not out on Friday at 2 o'clock, we'll be having conversation about it. But outside of that, whether you write it at 7 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night doesn't really make much odds, as long as you're getting that break in between. And
exactly, and I think that's why that's why Viva Insights is good, because it indicates activity and levels of engagement, all of the different parts of teams, but on a high level, so you can look at those patterns. And I think from a managerial perspective, if you're looking at how those patterns differ between departments or maybe offices, there might be an underlying culture that's a little bit unhealthy.
yeah,
It's looking at those sort of pointers, and then you could go a little bit further, say with something like teamwork analytics, and actually drill down into that and think, right, who's it affecting? Are they actually active throughout the day? How much are they doing at weekends? Does their contract require them to work at weekends? And is that them, or do they just like catching up and getting straight before another week starts?
Yeah. So I think, we used to get obviously the My Analytics that came into your Outlook and said, yeah, you've had X number of meetings and this amount of quiet time and all that sort of stuff. And that's great. I think the ability to present that on an individual basis and on a management layer as well really is starting to open this conversation up as a regular part of business. So I'd be interested to see how the uptake of insights goes, because we've said it so many times, your business is your workforce, it's your people. And if they're in a complete wreck of a state, they're of no use to you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds a bit harsh, but you don't want that. You want fresh minds, enthusiastic people, and so now presenting that information on a managerial level, it will be interesting to see A, how it's adopted, but B, how many people start to look at whether or not there should be some sort of well-being role for somebody who's sitting there and going, okay, yeah, we need to look at this team or that culture or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think Caroline, two things you said really resonated there. One was culture. The company's got to have the right culture to start with, which I think luckily at Modality we've really got that. And like you said, Pete, it's kind of like we're results driven anyway. So something's got to be done by a certain point. We've got to get there to that point and deliver it. So it's nice that you have that flexibility of being able to do stuff when you want to do it, as long as it gets done by X point. The other thing you mentioned, Caroline, was how maybe someone just likes to get ahead on, say, on a Sunday afternoon, just make sure I've got everything, all my ducks in a row for Monday morning and I'm ready to go and smash it out. That's really, really important, I think. And there's tools within Viva to do that as well, isn't there? Like the wrap up at the end of the day, the daily commute, they call it.
That's right, yes. Yeah.
So do you think people are going to understand that?
Well, I didn't until I saw a session about it at an expo recently, and I thought, oh, that's what it's about. Okay, now it makes sense, and I can absolutely see the value.
Yeah, it's not about pretending to get in your car and drive home. It's not. I'm going to sit in the car for 30 minutes for the whole steering wheel.
I did read. I think I watched a webinar a while ago when the pandemic first hit, and one guy said he gets up in the morning, he goes outside the front door, and he walks around to the back and walks into the back door, and that's him coming into work. Just so in his mind, he's like, right, here we go, we're starting the day. So that's like his actual commute. But I don't know, I see bits of it as really useful. Certainly I like the to-do lists you can do at the end of the day, and just say if you've got stuff in your mind and you're trying to finish off the day and you're like, these 5 things I've got to do first thing tomorrow, jot them in that daily commute pops up. You can set what time it comes on, so at like 5:30 it pops up, reminds you, and you're like, right, jot those things on my to-do list. Tomorrow morning I'm going to get a digest email, they're going to be in my reminders on my to-do list, and you're just ready to go.
Yeah.
And I think a step on from that is also the Headspace app, which is more sort of meditative. But again, cumulatively, the tools that you can use Viva for do address a lot of what we now term as well-being, which I guess back in the day was called occupational health.
I remember that. But yeah, I mean, it's
my age here.
I think there's an awful lot of skepticism in probably certainly driven by vector, market sectors, I would have said, about the importance of well-being. And I think there is a growing trend that people are starting to take it much more seriously. But definitely having access to multiple tools that do a little bit for you here and a little bit for you there. I think that kind of approach is if you're not looking at it, surely that's got to be a little bit of an error, in the sense that, even if you look at it and go, hey, no, we're all good, that's fine. But I mean, where's the value if you've, not looked at it and you've got a piece of technology sitting there going, whoa, hang on, Jack's a bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
What's the impact of, either Jack reaching the point where he says stuff it and quits, or you've got some sort of more underlying, bordering on the down type thing. I'm not suggesting anything like this, obviously, about you, Jack. You're a very nice guy and you seem to be fully in control of things at the moment. But the actual value of that kind of thing, I mean, what are the Viva things? They're about £3 a month, aren't they, per user? And you only have to think of sheer hard justifiable costs of, well, if you save 2 or 3 people from leaving the organization, that's quite a lot of recruitment fees.
Or being off with stress for 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
It's paid more than paid for itself, isn't it?
Oh, completely. And again, that's one of those, I think, as you said, Pete, not using those tools is a real mistake, because, again, if we talk about hybrid working, remote working, if you're in an office situation and you see somebody walking around with their head down, really not looking happy, then you might raise it with somebody. But if the only time you see somebody is in a meeting, you wouldn't necessarily pick up on those cues.
Well, I would say, actually, and Jack, you might be able to either back me up or shoot me down. I always fall into the trap of saying, you can back me up on this. It's almost like an instruction. But, I mean, I know you're relatively new to the firm still, but we've been used to talking to people in this 2-dimensional environment now for quite a long time, and video's been a great, can you imagine doing it just on phone? Just on audio, be awful. But the difference in interaction between that and then when we met a couple of weeks ago as a group, you realize how much is missing from that virtual world, and how important those stupid little conversations about absolute nonsense are.
Yes.
I mean, I remember when we first went into the lockdowns, we had people, we did it in our team as well. We set up sort of a coffee session at a particular time each day, and I know other teams then, did similar things and different things to have that same sort of effect. And it helps. It wasn't a replacement for, but I think actually, now people have settled into generally a routine. Having this ongoing, almost monitoring of people's interactions, etc., is probably even more valuable now than it was 18 months ago, I guess. Because this isn't going to change. Reality of it is, you can talk about hybrid office, you can talk about returning to, your actual place of work or whatever it is. But I think the reality of it is, people only really want to go back to the office 1 or 2 days a week in general, which means 60% of their time they're at home working.
I think as well, you said that when you actually met for the first time, yes, you realise that there's a lot that you haven't been able to pick up on with, working and interacting in 2D. But at the same time, as you said, if it was just phone, it would be awful. And that's why I think looking at meeting behaviours is also a really important thing. So, I mean, that's something Teamwork Analytics does, of course, in in looking at how many meetings people attend by video. Again, if we're talking about potential red flags, are there people in your team who never switch on their video? They're missing out on the facial cues. Everybody knows that if you receive flat text, it can be really easily misinterpreted. But if you say something to someone's face and you see a reaction and maybe they've got it quite a little bit wrong, you think, oh, no, that's not what I meant at all. But if you haven't got your video on, you'll miss that completely. And I think, joining by video can really help.
That's hugely important, actually. So, I mean, I know I've been in the office in the past and I've been sat in meetings and I've sort of looked across at someone and I've pinged them a message in Teams going, all right. I was like, oh, just tired. Don't worry, I'm fine. Didn't get sleep well last night, or whatever it may be. But I tend to do the same when you're in a meeting and the video's on. I think if you've got a pattern where somebody's joining meetings and, let's face it, we've got the data to be able to say whether or not somebody's interacting in meetings or whether or not they're not turning their video on, or whatever stat you want to look at. But if you've got somebody who's doing endless meetings next day and not interacting and not messaging and not posting things and not there, you've probably got a problem there.
Yeah.
And that's either from somebody's well-being or the fact that you've got a disengaged employee.
Yeah.
So I think it is all quite closely linked in.
It is, isn't it? I think because Viva will give you that anonymized view at the management level, won't it? So you can see trends and see how people are feeling and things like that, which is really useful. But that will help you identify if you think there is an issue. But then you might need to drill down further into it. And so if you can drill down and really get that info, like, oh, so and so's not putting their video on. It's not about trying to weed out people who aren't doing things you want them to. It's about making sure that they're all right, and is there a reason that they're doing it, and having that.
Actually, that's a really interesting point, because these even at a high level when it's slightly anonymized, it's quite powerful data. So you've got to know that the people who are looking at that data are coming at it from having the user's best interest at heart,
and it's not
from a why aren't they? Because that would be an absolutely destructive tool if you used it that way.
Yeah, that's where it comes from, the culture, doesn't it, of the whole business, really.
It does. I mean, I remember, God, I keep going back and saying, I remember in the olden days. But I do remember having conversations when, sort of LCS landed. I was working in an organisation and we were talking about the German arm of the organisation. They were saying, oh, we don't want the presence information because you might be able to see when we're not, at our desk or not working. And it was quite interesting because my immediate reaction to that was, if you seriously think I've got the time to look at whether or not you're online or green or yellow or red or whatever, you are sadly mistaken. So it never even crossed my mind. But I think, it is definitely something that you have to come at it with the right mentality for. So the virtual commute, do you think the virtual commute is really just about sort of shutting down your brain at the end of the day?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's important, I think, definitely. Yeah, I've got a wife and kids who want me to be involved in what they're doing at the end of the day.
So they want you to be fun husband and dad, not stressed out.
Yeah, exactly. Not just like, oh, what's that? What have I got to do next? And continuous, just never switching off. So it really is to have that distinction of, right, I've finished for the day. I can concentrate on something else and worry about tomorrow.
And actually, your the example that you mentioned, Jack, about the guy going out of his front door, walking around the house and in again. Sometimes you do need some kind of physical separation from the workspace. Whether it's shutting down your laptop and putting it in a drawer till the next day. There's got to be, personally speaking, there's got to be that separation. And the virtual commute, when I did physically sit on a train and all the ideas come, jot down a few notes, by the time I got home, that was all out of my head. And I think that's why it's so important to switch off. Otherwise, whatever you do in the evening, something will ping in your head, and it's far too tempting to then go over, start up a computer again, jot something down, and the next thing you know, it's 40 minutes later and you're back into workspace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Although I do have one note on my phone in case I get a really good idea and need to jot it down. So
Now that I think is absolutely fair, because I think it's one of those elements where you just need to take it out of your head and deal with it. I mean, I'm a bit of a Harry Potter fan. I think it's lovely, and one of the things I would absolutely almost kill for would be the idea of the pensive, where you can take a thought out of your head, drop it into something, and watch it back again later. I think that would be a brilliant idea. But bearing in mind that the fact that we don't live in a magical world and that stuff doesn't exist, I think actually just having the ability to write down your ideas, pop it in, and then as you said, it's going to be there when you come back the following morning or after the weekend. I think that's actually an extremely sensible thing. So we've talked a bit about the well-being bit. One bit we haven't talked about, for me, part of well-being is perpetual development and learning. Now, obviously, one of the things that's been talked about this is turning into a Viva session, isn't it? Basically, one of the things we've talked about with Viva on the webcasts, webinars we did recently, was the fact that the way that you learn is now starting to filter its way into daily basis, into your daily routine. So it's not I'm going to go and spend 3 days learning this topic. Obviously, that still needs to be done, but there's much more of a sort of a path that is taking us towards I need to understand what that term means, or what that project means, or what this is. And with the Viva learning piece and topics, etc., obviously that's now being dropped into your Teams client, so you can just hover over something and it tells you, the information you need about that. Is that kind of part of well-being? Because let's face it, if we're not interested in our jobs and we're not learning and developing, that's quite a big flag for me as well. I think people should be permanently developing, in whether it's personally or commercially or whatever. Do we think that's got grounds? Is that going to settle with people?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really important. I think, so again, if I come from being relatively new, having something where, especially in IT, how many acronyms are there? There's so many. And if you have topics set up really well, and an acronym gets dropped in a Teams chat, and you're sat there as a new starter and like, oh, I don't know what that one is, but you just hover your mouse over it, takes you straight to a topic. You can very quickly pick up on what it is and say, oh, I did know what it was, I just didn't know the acronym, or something like that. It just makes you so much more comfortable, and like you actually know what you're doing. That imposter syndrome can quickly get pushed away. And I think that's a really, really useful tool. So
I agree, and I think it really does help to build confidence, because if you're relatively junior, for example, and you don't fully understand something and you want to find out who you're best to speak to, something like topics actually puts those experts in front of you, or some snippets of information that actually fill those gaps. And I think that people can suffer from confidence issues a little bit too easily, thinking, oh God, do I go all the way up to that person when I just need to answer a quick question? And I think the ability to have that just flashing up wherever you're working, it builds that confidence and fills in the gaps, and it helps people get settled in, and as you say, learn all the acronyms, the industry terms if they're unfamiliar, and all of the internal stuff as well.
I think it is going to be the new way of learning. Not if you've got a particular product to learn or something, you're still going to have to do that immersion technique. But I think definitely as you're going through your normal working world, it is going to be a case of, actually, I need to know about this, I need to know about that, I'll just have a look at it. That casual almost learning is going to be a cultural shift. And I think that's not a bad thing, because I think you learn the stuff as you need to know it.
Yes, because we've all been to one-day immersion sessions on things that you don't then use for 3 weeks, and by the time you're in front of it, you go, I really don't remember a great deal about that. So on the job, sort of almost passive learning, by osmosis is what insights can enable, certainly.
I always remember my first ever job on a service desk, and they had this like Bible that could answer every question. It was this thick, and it was like in your first like 3 months or something, you had to read through the Bible and get to know everything. Because how can you ever take anything like that in? So having it pop up when you need it is so useful, isn't it? Rather than then, I read that once and it was on page like 500. Thumbing through it while you've got chatting on the phone to someone, trying to keep them interested while you quickly look something up. It's
no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. We'll do a separate session on not being able to ask people things of seniority, because I'm a big supporter of holacracy rather than a hierarchy for the sake of it. So you should be able to ask anybody anything as long as it's relevant. I mean, it's I think by the time you bring all of this stuff together, so we've looked at sort of the tools to help you manage your time. You've looked at the Headspace app, we've looked at the virtual commutes, or we've talked about these things, virtual commutes. You then got different ways of learning. You've got identifying how people are going to, if they're going to burn out or not, or do you need to look at that? Bring all of that together in one big bubble. There is actually quite a lot in the toolkit that I think, organizations really should be looking at, and I know we probably need to do more internally. I think we've got a good chunk of it. We haven't got the whole lot, but it definitely strikes me as Viva's been sort of spouted around as being this this amazing new sort of service and tool, and with all of these various bits. But actually, by the time you start to look at the stuff and putting it into the bigger picture of how you look after your employees, I think actually it's going to be a bit of a shift in the way that businesses look after their staff. I really do.
Yeah, I agree.
I was skeptical at first. I'll be perfectly honest. It was a bit like, really? Do we think people are going to pay for that? And I think it's, again, it's. I think you and I have spoken about it, Jack. If you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out, right? Yeah. But actually, there's a lot of stuff there that could be really, really valuable.
Yeah, I think like having each different part is really important as well. I think it could revolutionize how companies onboard employees as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really good use case for it, actually. You could set up like structured learning programs that they're going to do at different points throughout their onboarding experience. You can say, look, go here, there's a whole wealth of information in this part of learning with loads of content that's perfect for your role. You can look at get things like the virtual community ingrained in them from the start.
I guess the other thing as well, when you're talking about the onboarding, is if you've got a default structured set of content and tasks that go out, you've got a level of consistency there as well. It was delivered by person A that week and person B this week, and person C made an absolute mess of it when they delivered it 2 months later or whatever. It's like you've actually got proper consistency there, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yes, you have. And I think with something like Viva Connections as well, if you configure the dashboard right, again, for new starters, it's lovely because you can see what's going on throughout the organization, as well as bits that are relevant just for you. And just from the one place, you can hook off to all of the other Viva tools. So it's some of it can be lighthearted, however much you choose to bring in from Yammer, or events that your company's holding, as well as links to your personalized learning, the latest bits and topics, whatever it might be. I think having that in the background as well is a nice way to bring everything together.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Well, I think we've been talking about this for about 40 minutes now. And we should probably look at wrapping it up, I guess. But it's actually Yeah, I think it's going to be an area that we need to watch quite carefully because there's quite a lot to it. Closing thoughts from anybody? Or are you happy to wind it up where we are?
I think you pretty much nailed it there by saying it looks like it's just this small little thing, Viva, that's like maybe an afterthought or something that a company might look at. But actually, we've just spent 40 minutes talking about it, and we could probably spend another 40 minutes talking about it just naturally. So I think that says what a really wide reach it could have. So yeah,
great, cool. Well, thank you very both. Oh, thank you very both. That's not even English, is it? Thank you both very much. It's been a long morning.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you very much. So just a reminder for you, we have Jack Fisher, pre-sales consultant, Caroline Edwards, product marketing manager. You need a better title as well. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, both, from Wellbeing to what turned out to be a pretty much a Viva Fest. Lovely. Thank you very much. And we will be back in 2 weeks with the next topic.
This is the Mod Pod, brought to you by Modality, helping businesses optimize their Microsoft technologies everywhere.